Breaking news, as we were recording this video, Sam Bankman-Fried, CEO of FTX, has been arrested. Police in the Bahamas arrested FTX founder SBF in anticipation of an extradition request after U.S. officials filed criminal charges, the country's attorney general said.
The current CEO of FTX, John Ray, and ousted CEO Sam Bankman-Fried are expected to testify in front of the House tomorrow.
The House Financial Services Committee confirmed that the former FTX CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, and the current FTX CEO, John J. Ray III, will both be attending and testifying what Congress is calling investigating the collapse of FTX Part 1, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday. As is standard, at least on John J. Ray's side, the current FTX CEO, he released his statement 24 hours in advance. He says, while many things are unknown at this stage and many questions remain, we know the following 6 things. First, second, third, fourth, 5, 6. I'm going to take you through it 24 hours in advance in today's video. We're going to talk about what SBF is likely to say based on what he has been saying and how he's getting trained.
I wasn't even trying. I wasn't spending any time or effort trying to manage risk on FTX.
Also, we're going to get some insight on the former SEC chair, Jay Clayton, and how he thinks, based on his experience heading the SEC, what he thinks is likely to go down. So John J. Ray, the current FTX CEO, is going to be Congress's first panelist tomorrow, followed by Sam Bankman-Fried. So let's start with what John J. Ray is likely to say. First of all, remember when John J. Ray III mentioned that FTX had no accounts on their payroll? This is true and will likely come up in the hearings tomorrow. Excerpt from FTX's Section 11 bankruptcy filing that states that there were no in-house accounting. Not to mention that Sam Bankman-Fried explained to Bloomberg Business recently that FTX's accounting was done by him in his head. Quote, I was real lazy about the mental math. We'll talk about this strategy a little bit later. In addition, there are 6 main points as a part of John J. Ray's statement for tomorrow. Let's just go through them. It begins, while many things are unknown at this stage and many questions remain, we know the following. And many experts in the industry are saying that's curtains for Sam Bankman-Fried. John J. Ray testifies tomorrow with these 6 points. Sam will be utterly hamstrung by this. So, what are the 6 bombshells that the current FTX CEO, John J. Ray, is going to bring up in his prepared statement for tomorrow's hearing? This is it. Number 1, customer assets from FTX were commingled with assets from Alameda trading platform. Number 2, Alameda used client funds to engage in margin trading, which exposed customer funds to massive losses. Number 3, the FTX group went on a spending binge in late 2021 through 2022, during which approximately $5 billion was spent buying a myriad of businesses and investments, many of which may be worth only a fraction of what was paid for them. Number 4, loans and other payments were made to insiders in excess of $1 billion. Number 5, FTX stored certain private keys to crypto assets without effective security controls. And number 6, FTX used computer infrastructure that gave senior management access to systems that stored customer assets. Again, many people are looking at this and thinking this might be curtains for Sam Bankman-Fried. Breaking news, as we were recording this video, Sam Bankman-Fried, CEO of FTX, has been arrested. Police in the Bahamas arrested FTX founder SBF in anticipation of an extradition request after U.S. officials filed criminal charges, the country's attorney general said. Very important to follow us on Twitter so you'll get this information immediately. Assuming that he'll still be able to zoom in to the hearing tomorrow, let's talk about how SBF is likely to respond to such huge allegations. And let's go to not just an attorney, not just a man of the law, Jay Clayton, but the former SEC chair before Gary Gensler. If anybody has some insight to share on this, it's this man. If you're a subscriber to our channel, I know you are way more informed than most people on Sam Bankman-Fried's very precise strategy, right or wrong, on how he's choosing to deal with answering to FTX fraud. We've seen him absolutely squirm when pressed on stealing FTX customer funds.
If Alameda is borrowing the money that belongs to FTX depositors, that's a bright red line, isn't it?
There are a lot of cases where that's actually explicitly part of the programs and that are happening.
But not here. Here it says that the digital assets may not be loaned to FTX trading. They can't be loaned out.
Question for Jay Clayton is, do you think that Sam Bankman-Fried will change his tune, change the way he answers questions now that he is answering in a congressional hearing?
Is this going to be different when he's testifying actually before Congress? Will there be more I don't recalls instead of more I didn't didn't know I was doing anything wrong? I mean, he's got to tell the absolute truth now, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think there'll be more of the same, but then there'll be more, Joe. There's a lot going on in these congressional hearings. People will be trying to get to the bottom of what happened. Did it happen because it was offshore? Would it have happened in the U.S.? But then there's a lot of other things. I mean, members of Congress are not constrained in what they're able to ask.
Neither was Andrew. Were you, Andrew? I don't think you were concerned.
Nope.
But if somebody asks Sam Bankman-Fried if he knowingly commingled customer funds at FTX, like he's been asked so many times, Jay Clayton, what do you think he's going to say?
If someone says, did you knowingly commingle customer funds with Alameda, what did he say to you when you asked him that? He's like, it was like nebulous.
FTX trading does not represent or treat digital assets and users' accounts as belonging to FTX trading. So how is it possible that Alameda had this loan of such a large size?
So there's that piece from the terms of service, but there were a number of other parts of the terms of service and a number of other parts of the platform on top of that. There is the borrow lending facility.
But just make this very straight. Was there commingling of funds? That's what it appears like. It appears like there's been a genuine commingling of the funds that are of FTX customers that were not supposed to be commingled with your separate firm.
I didn't knowingly commingle funds.
If someone says, did you knowingly commingle customer funds with Alameda, what did he say to you when you asked him that? He's like, it was like nebulous the way doesn't he have to give a more?
He didn't give if we didn't get to a yes or no.
That's what I mean. So does he do it? I don't recall now? What does he do? I know people do I don't recall again and again and again.
I think one of the reasons this is going to be so interesting and why we're talking about today is we will see. We'll see how he handles those questions under that kind of pressure. One of the things that makes you a good witness in front of Congress is whether you're coming off as authentic or not. And that is actually a very important part of preparing for these types of hearings.
So that's a really important thing that everybody's going to be watching for tomorrow. Do you think that Sam Bankman-Fried will come across as genuine and authentic in tomorrow's hearing? Do you think SBF has come across authentic thus far?
To my knowledge, I have basically nothing left. Basically everything I had was invested in the business. I expect I'm going to have nothing at the end of this. I think I had $100,000 left in my bank account last I checked, and I think I have, one credit card working with that right now.
Earlier this summer, you thought you had, what, $32 billion?
Probably 20, but a whole lot more than I do now.
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah, it's been a really humbling fall in a lot of ways.
I really liked this question that CNBC analyst asked Jay Clayton. She says, so if SBF lies to Congress, if SBF perjures himself, what happens? Because honestly, it doesn't always seem like he's telling the truth.
If he perjures himself in front of them, what happens?
Well, perjury is perjury, and you're not.
That's why I don't recall is going to be more than no, I didn't do anything.
I am sure that he is preparing thoroughly and going through a fair amount of what is referred to as murder boarding, Q&A. Right. How would you respond to this? That's a big part of preparing for a hearing like this.
So very likely that SBF is preparing hard to answer Congress's questions in a very specific way, and he's been doing this the whole time. SBF's been trying to paint this narrative that he was just so dumb and ignorant and had no malicious intent. You remember this?
That you said one of your great talents in a podcast was managing risk.
That's right. And
Well, it's obviously wrong.
well, I think that there is something maybe even deeper wrong there, which was I wasn't even trying. Like, I wasn't spending any time or effort trying to manage risk on FTX, and that obviously
That's a
was
stunning
mistake.
admission.
What?
That's a pretty stunning admission.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, what happened. Honestly, if I look back on myself, I think I got a little cocky. I made more than a little bit. And I think part of me, felt like we'd made it.
Can you talk about the distinction between civil negligence and criminality in the context of what we think has happened here?
Well, look, the interesting part about the law is it's very complicated around someone's mental state. Is your mental state just, lack of paying attention? That's I would say the vernacular way to say negligence. Is it, you had an obligation to pay attention. There were all sorts of signs that you should be paying attention and you ignored them, recklessness? Or do you have some kind of intent that you were like, for example, I need that money. It's not my money,
Premeditated.
but I'm going to consciously transfer it to my account. Those levels go to level of culpability, different responsibilities at law. I mean, we actually have an amazingly flexible and nuanced legal system around situations like this.
From what you've seen thus far, maybe unfair to prejudge given that we don't have all the facts. What do you think?
Look, I think there was obviously a great deal of bad behavior here that we would think was bad behavior from our perspective as to how you run a financial institution in the United States, but also from a general perspective in how you handle any business.
But what about the idea that some of these laws that we have here around securities and all sorts of other things that might otherwise, things that maybe happened would have constituted fraud or worse here, wouldn't there?
Well, let me say this. We have an incredibly well-developed and rigorous legal system around securities markets, securities issuance, securities trading, all of those things. But its basis is in the common law. And outside the United States, there is still a fair amount of common law built around fraud and the like. What does our securities law system do? It creates processes, requirements, transparency, inspection that makes it much easier to detect fraud and prevent fraud. So, I'm not saying that around the world fraudulent activity isn't policed. We just have what I would say is an incredibly rigorous system for deterring it, detecting it, and when it exists, punishing it.
Subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, turn on YouTube notifications. We're going to be covering this every day this week, and we're going to keep you well informed on everything cryptocurrency. If you're planning to attend Bitcoin Conference 2023, let's hang out. It's going to be epic. Use code AltcoinDaily, 10% off. This is the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world. Use code AltcoinDaily, 10% off. Web3 is a joke, comedy show, and panel. If you're in the LA area or Southern California area, actually the Santa Monica area, Friday, December 16th, get your tickets for this. I'll leave a link in the description. Hope to see you there.